everybody to, I think this is about the seventh Business Brilliance event now, and it is honestly such a great thing to be able to say. We have been able to do a lot of remarkable things with a lot of remarkable people from a lot of remarkable places, right? And I think what we're doing here with Business Brilliance, we're day by day just coming closer and closer to our dreams and goals, not just as a company or a club, but individually, right? And that's what we're here to talk about today is how we can create success individually, together, and work with others to truly just create a better world, right? That's what we're all here to do to make a very, very big impact in any environment or ecosystem we go into. So for those who don't know what Business Brilliance is, I would just say Business Brilliance is the world's first centralized network of ambitious students from top schools around the world. And we have been able to expand to over 600 members worldwide, 35 institutions, 7 different countries, and all thanks to our executive board and really just each individual member. And what grows Business Brilliance isn't anybody doing anything they wouldn't typically do. What grows Business Brilliance is each individual member taking an additional step closer to their own version of success. So without further ado, I want to welcome everybody once again to How to Create Success Through Proactivity, Sociability, and Resilience, the definition of what it means to be business brilliant, ladies and gentlemen. And we are joined here with some lovely guests. But thank you guys all for coming. So we'll just start off with some introductions, of course, so we can have everybody understand who is on the panel. And I would like to just say that once again, we have some remarkable people from some remarkable places doing some remarkable things. So Elijah, if you would like to begin with your introduction.
Sure, yeah. Thank you guys all for coming virtually and in person, and really glad that you guys are here. Stoked to hear from you today, dive into your insights and advice on how you've created success for yourself in your careers. My name is Elijah Levine. I know most of you guys. I founded a tech-enabled asset manager about 2.5 years ago. That has led me to kind of think about the world in a new way of innovation and creativity, and very lucky to be partnered with Shane and Business Brilliance to be putting together amazing events like this and helping make an impact with students that are just kind of getting in the mix and looking to make a change in the world and shake things up. So excited to be here.
Great. I'm Todd Roth. I'm a University of Pennsylvania graduate from 2010. I played baseball here at Penn. I'm a first vice president at Morgan Stanley in wealth management.
Hi, I'm G. Michelle Mariani. I'm a 2011 graduate of Penn. I'm a lawyer, and currently I work as counsel for General Motors doing privacy and cybersecurity.
Hi, I'm Ani Vartanian. I graduated in 2020. I work at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, and I'm head of strategy in our internal communications and strategy department.
Awesome. And once again, joined with some great people. And I think one of the things that we try to emphasize a lot with Business Brilliance is uniting people from various backgrounds, people who've studied various things and come from a lot of different interests, to say the least. But also, the most significant part about Business Brilliance is that we all unite under the same intention, and that is to succeed in whatever we do. And we are joined with people who have obviously succeeded and gotten to some great points in their lives. And maybe you haven't achieved that success that you envision for yourself. And we would love to dive in more to that success that you envision for yourself, and if you've already created that. But I would say the first question that I have for this panel today is, how important would you guys say it is to be proactive, sociable, and resilient to create success? And what does each of those even mean to you guys?
I'll start with the first one, proactive. I always start any project or any big body of work by getting in front of it a month before those initial conversations. Because something's going to go wrong. Something's always going to go wrong. There's going to be a lot of absentees throughout the way, or deadlines are going to get pushed. So having a backup plan and then having a backup plan for my backup plan. And I never miss a beat most of the time when I work that way. When I pick something up at the last minute, I always notice it doesn't go as smoothly because I didn't have time to prepare for failure. I just think it's best that way to predict I'm not to say that you're gonna mess up all the time, but be prepared to mess up and how that's gonna go along the way. And as you do things over and over, you'll see, well, okay, last quarter I did it this way and this happened. So let me prepare just in case that happens this quarter. So what was the second part? Resiliency?
Yes.
I think being able to take the failure and being able to take feedback is so important. Especially where I work, I don't have the last say in everything. Everything is vetted by VPs and senior VPs and, you know, the president of the bank, so you're gonna get so much input all the time. And you could be so excited to turn something in, you think it's perfect, and it gets torn apart. And you just have to take it. You have to say, okay, and then ask, well, how do you want it to look? Don't be afraid to ask questions, because you can't just go back to your desk and try to figure it out, because it still might not be what they want. So ask questions and take the feedback, you know, deal with your emotions at a later time if that's what it is, but take the feedback and just be more grateful that you're getting feedback to begin with, because some people don't even get that and they have to go back to the drawing board with nothing.
Sociability.
Oh, that to me is more important than the other two, because if you can't communicate your work, or if you forget that not everybody went to Penn, right? You're gonna work with people that might not have a college education. You have to be able to tailor yourself to appeal to those people, whether it's clientele or people you work with or whatever it is. If you're trying to sell something or trying to obtain something, not everybody went to Wharton. Not everybody knows the vocabulary you might be using. So you need to switch it up and be able to read a room. And that's where psychology comes into place. That's where sociology comes into place. And just be comfortable being yourself. Don't try to fit a mold, because most of the time when you're yourself, other people in the room that may be more standoffish will warm up to you. And you'll make a sale, or you'll gain that client, or you just gain so much trust and respect. Even if it's not money in your pocket, you left with respect that day, and that person will trickle that down to somebody else. So I think just being able to switch up your communication, your language, depending on where you are, is very important. And, you know, that's hard for us, people that graduated from here, because we're so used to walking around this campus and approaching, you know, professors, other students with certain types of communication, because that's kind of what we're drilled to do the whole 4 years or 2 years that you're here. So you need to leave here remembering that not everyone went to school with you or went to school at all. So just having an open mind and being respectful is very important.
Yeah, so I will use an example here. So I work, like I said, at GM. I do a lot of privacy by design work. So I look at a lot of the new products that we're launching, and I work to ensure that they are in compliance with all different privacy laws, privacy regulations here in the US and, you know, across the globe. So the thing is, being proactive is super important in my job. I need to work with my clients like from the beginning, right? Because, for example, we're launching a new product that's, if any of you are, well, probably not. I mean, you can drive. What am I saying? Thanks. Well, I didn't have a car when I was in college because I didn't use one. But anyway, if you have a Tesla, or anyone in your family has a Tesla, they have like that Sentry mode where you turn it on and you can kind of see what's going on around your car. So, you know, if someone's trying to break in, you get an alert, you can go look and see what happened. But we're doing something similar at GM, external, internal cameras that you can actually remotely view your camera from your phone. So this is a new thing we're launching, a lot of issues involving privacy in terms of recording individuals, in terms of sending those recordings to GM, all kinds of stuff, right? So if my clients just started designing this whole product and then brought me in at the end, it'd be a complete disaster. So we won't be able to launch on time, all kinds of stuff. So it's super important to, you know what the goals are wherever you're working, know when you should get involved so that, you know, your whatever stakeholder you are, you know, you're able to give your advice from the beginning. Resiliency, I mean, it's a business, right? So I had an issue actually like last year where there were privacy issues. There was concerns about launching this one particular product. And basically our head of software said, this should have been done yesterday. Like, we want this particular product in the cars. We want the money now. So you have to push, like, you gotta be super creative. I know everyone in here is super smart. Being creative and finding out a way to make something work instead of saying no, or instead of putting the risk first, is super important. You want to insulate whatever company you're working at as much as possible, particularly if you're in like a legal field, but you want to push forward and get that stuff done. Innovation gets squashed if you're constantly like, you know, putting the hammer down on things. And then sociability, I mean, it's so important, guys. I'm sure you've had students in your classes that suck. And I work with people that kind of suck too. And I don't want to talk to them. I'm like, oh, geez, this guy again. And it's terrible. And I'm not the only one who feels that way, right? Like you have to be nice. You're talking to engineers, you're talking to, I mean, me anyway, like I talk to engineers, I talk to other attorneys, I talk to people who are from all different walks of life, and you have to be able to get at to their level, be conscious of their opinion and have a conversation. If you're just like up here and like just a real pain in the butt, no one's gonna like you, no one's gonna want to work with you, and in certain places you'll just get fired, honestly. It's like, I mean, I know before I was at General Motors, I was a clerk for the circuit court, and one of the things that the judges told me there was one of the most important things is obviously your grades and everything, but when you get in there, can you connect with that person? If you walk in and they're just like, ugh, I don't want to talk to you every day, you're not gonna get the job, right? So it's super, super important to like stay chill, stay a nice person to be around, so.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with my personal experience with Penn and kind of thereafter. And I think that all kind of comes into play. Just, I played baseball at Penn. It was hard to juggle a sport and an Ivy League school when I came from high school where honestly, I never had to work hard. It was easy, just walk through classes, walk through tests. And you get to Penn and all of a sudden you find out like first semester, oh, this is gonna be different. Like, everyone in the room is smarter than you, smarter than any person you ever met, basically, or just about. And so, when I graduated, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna get a job because I went to Penn. Like, I'm just gonna apply a couple places and get a job. Nobody hired me. Nobody. I was like, oh, I thought I was supposed to get a job now. I'm like, yeah, you gotta go find a job. Okay, maybe I'll go to law school because I don't want to get a job yet. I didn't go to law school, but I got a job through networking with my uncle at the shore. And working on Wall Street and getting licensed and then launching that into a training program at Merrill Lynch. Found out there pretty quickly too, if you just do what they put on paper for you in terms of goals, if you don't set your own goals, you don't figure out, look further ahead of where you want to be. If you just follow the track they have for you, I would have graduated that program, hitting the base number and been very unhappy with what my career looked like and what my compensation was and kind of what that whole path would have been if I hadn't gone and put, okay, look a couple of years ahead. So I think there's a lot of value to that, and especially while you're in the midst of it at Penn or at school, just thinking, this is where you're learning that resilience. This is where you're learning how to be sociable. This is where you're learning these life skills that are going to apply later on. It's not about waiting until you get that first job and figuring these things out. You're learning about those things right now, and the more you can think about that and go big picture with it and realize this grade I'm getting this next week after midterms is not the most important thing ever. It's what am I learning in the midst of it? What am I learning about how to talk to my neighbors or ask for help or challenging myself to do more than I thought I could? That I think is what you come out of a school like this with, or any school you're in. Then your life is what you can make it. So.
Certainly, I think everything you guys said is spot on, and I was so glad when Shane brought up the subject for this panel, because these three topics are really the ultimate trifecta of soft skills that you need for success. And I think one of my favorite quotes from Jeff Bezos is basically talking about how in life there's so many times when you're trying to make a change, you're getting all these hard skills, but you don't have the ability to connect with people. And if you're not connecting with people and they don't like you, then you're never going to get the opportunity to be in the room, to be on the projects, and to be doing the things that are actually making a difference. And so I think like by being resilient, being sociable, and being determined and hardworking, you need really all those things to have success.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to those traits, they allow people to really go outside of their box with a template, right? And I think it really is the template and the recipe for success, not just to be proactive, not just to be resilient, not just to be sociable, but all three things at once, and understanding that it is just a matter of me being able to take the steps to, make sure that I can be all these things. And I don't think sociability is a matter of, you having to be an extrovert to do it. I think you can be a great listener and be sociable. I think you can be somebody who puts themselves in the right rooms and you be sociable that way. And you just are proactive enough to find those rooms. You're resilient enough to know that, if this isn't the right room, that doesn't mean I stop, right? You continue going. And I think, what you said, Annie, about that earlier is, truly beautifully said about, just taking those steps to make that success. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how beneficial for the future do you think it would be for us to really just start pushing this message onto like students, especially members of Business Brilliance, that this is what they should be, and what type of future do you see that being able to create?
I think and I know they drill this in your guys' head, but I know it's very important to be comfortable with public speaking. That is a soft skill that a lot of people, they don't even learn until they're adults. Like, I work with grown adults that still can't do this, and it shows. And, I don't want to talk bad about my colleagues, but when you're giving a presentation and the big boss is in the room, the president of the bank is in the room, he loses interest very quick. And it's the worst feeling when he walks out on a meeting. I've seen him do it before, or I'll be in the back, or I'm clicking slides for my VP and he just walks out because there's 30 other places he could be giving his time to. So being able to present something, not just get people to be on board, but just to listen to what you have to say is very important. And that comes back off with what I said about communication, just using simple language. You don't need to thesaurus every single term in your speech or in your pitch or whatever it is, because people listen to what makes them feel comfortable. And when they're out of the office, they're not speaking how you probably would assume they are. They're regular people. So I think being relatable, but still showing your intelligence at the same time is very important. And then always allowing questions. I am not the type to wait till the end for questions, because what if they have to jump to another call or whatever? I will just ask periodically, am I making sense? Do you have a question? Do you think it should be done another way? And that is very flattering to other VPs in the room when you say, well, I'm new, I'm only here for a year. How do you think I should be doing this? You've been doing this for 20 years, or you've seen this done for so long. And you get people that may have had interesting feelings about what you were trying to say. For me, a lot of times it's different strategies for the bank. They weren't on board, now they're on board because you're touching every single person's idea or opinion. So they feel a part of what you're doing and they feel like, okay, this will benefit me now. So I think being able to speak well, articulate yourself well, and just have a very open mind and always allow for flow of communication with big projects, big pitches and speeches, it gets people in your corner. And your corner grows without you realizing, because when you're not in the room is when people are talking about, oh, so-and-so gave this presentation and I think I'm gonna veer that way. So I think it's really important to think about the impact you leave in rooms that you're not in.
And I think just, something you can do now, right? Because we're talking about our jobs and where we are now, and there's a big disconnect, right? You're just starting out and figuring out what I want to do and how do I get there. And so, I went to law school, obviously, and to go to law school, when you fill out your application, you have to get recommendations, right? And I had a lot of really smart friends here at Penn and other really, high performing institutions. They made no connection with their professors. And so when they went to get recs, like the professor was like, I don't know, I guess this person was good. Like they got an A in my class, but that's all they could say about them. So I remember being here and like there were certain classes, I was like, oh, I hate this class, I don't want to go, or this professor's boring or whatever. But there were certain professors, and I went to class, you should always go to class, because otherwise you're wasting money. I was thinking about that. I'm like, yeah. And it was like, you never get the opportunity to sit here and learn from people. And maybe that sounds nerdy now, or like to you guys, but when I think about it now, I'm like, oh, damn. No one's ever gonna let you just sit here and learn a subject anymore. It's gonna be like, you don't have time for this, you gotta go back to work. So definitely take advantage of it. And if you have room in your schedule, take electives that are of interest to you. Don't be like, oh my God, I have to get I wanna go to Harvard Law, so I know I need to take all these different classes. Like, yeah, that's great, but make time to do, if you're interested in languages, if you're interested in literature, whatever it is, take the time, you'll never get it again. That's a side note, but yeah, so you should definitely make time to connect with your professors, go to their office hours. I had so many friends who never did. These people are here, you know, you're paying them to be here. So definitely take that time to make those connections that when you need a rec, whether it's law school, med school, grad school, or you just want to bounce ideas off someone in the future. You know, doing that stuff now is super helpful. And if you're looking for internships, I mean, being able to pull, like I pulled from my Penn network constantly after I graduated, just being like, hey, you know, can we talk? You know, can we do this? Can we do that? So I could get interviews and things like that. It might not always land you the job, but it'll get you, you know, 10 steps closer. So being proactive, being sociable now is really gonna pay off in the future.
When I first got in the business, I was, so I managed families well, so I helped them retire and then, you know, maintain retirement the rest of their life and pass on that assets they have to their children, like that. But I got in the business as a cold caller. So in terms of resiliency, like hearing no a lot of times every single day. But I knew there were guys in the office and all the best producers in our office and the top rated guys that I wanted to be when I grew up. They all cold called and or inherited the book from their dad, or they inherited the book from their dad. They cold called. And so I would ask them questions about what are you saying? How are you saying it? I sit down, listen to your calls. And that's super important to ask those questions and to learn people that are already in the spot that you want to be and not feel like you have to reinvent the wheel every single time. You can put your own touch on things, like that's totally a great idea and it's worth the mental exercise and the actual growing of yourself to do that. But I'm not sure that you need to again reinvent every single wheel in your career, in your role as a student. Stick to what works, stick to what's worked. People, you know, were there before you doing what you're trying to do and learn from that experience. And then the second thing I did that helped change my career was allowing my colleagues to listen to what I thought I was doing in terms of presenting to people. And I think it's easy to think in your head, oh, I'm saying it this way, or it's coming off this way, or this is how they're going to understand what I'm saying. But until you actually let someone else on the outside listen to what you're doing or review what you're doing or open up and take that next step of just being vulnerable and saying, hey, listen to my phone call and say how many times I hear, you know, you hear the word or what, or do I say anything that sounds like I'm 22, like I am, or do I sound like I'm 35 and hopefully confuse them into giving me all their money? But you get that feedback from somebody on the outside and then being open to that, if it changed my career. The guys I see in the programs that I've trained since graduating my program, and throughout my career, guys who are open to that and open to getting that feedback and hearing it constantly and getting corrected and learning from those experiences, always do better than people who are think they're doing it the right way and gonna stick to it. I'm gonna do it my own way. I'm gonna figure it out my own way. There's a middle ground there for sure.
Totally. Being able to take feedback and do an honest evaluation of your own work is so important. One thing we adopted in our company recently was recording our internal team meetings and calling it game film. Because, you know, as you know, anyone who's played a sport, you'll watch other teams that you're going to go against and even watch yourselves to see what you did wrong objectively and see what you can do to fix it objectively. And I was astonished listening to our calls back, like, oh my gosh, I could have been so much nicer, said that in such a better way. Because to Ani's point, like how you make people feel in your interactions is so important, and the way that you're talking to them and making them feel heard and having your voice be heard makes such a difference in the way that you conduct yourself and everything. And in terms of proactivity, I think like everyone procrastinates a lot and kind of waits until the last minute. And when you are waiting until the last minute, it creates a lot of nervousness. And when you go into a room more prepared and you're starting on things months before, that allows you to go in with so much more confidence to bring that higher energy and therefore to make people feel like you actually know what you're talking about and to trust and respect your decisions. And so I think like being able to challenge yourself to be resilient through feedback and to go ahead and do the difficult thing of starting early and being hard on yourself, like I actually need to do this, will make all the difference in the world when you're actually going to do that.
I think that's great. And honestly, Elijah, I think you serve as an inspiration to the entire business brilliance community globally because of what you've been able to do with Black Mountain Investment Group along with Kyle. And just a quick side note, Ani talked about the importance of asking questions. So if you have any questions during this, feel free to raise your hand and ask. I mean, if anybody does, feel free to obviously jump in. But yes, in the face of just the evolving world and you being a young entrepreneur along with Mr. Kyle over there, can you talk a little bit more about how you have truly had to embody proactivity, sociability, and resilience to create this multi-million-dollar company?
Yeah, I mean, resilience is probably the biggest thing, like, especially when we were first getting started. It was just like getting knocked down time and time again, like, our first fund is focused on crypto, and so we were trading on FTX during the crash and literally got off the exchange with hours to spare of saving our money. And that happens, and Celsius goes down, and then, you know, everyone is like, I got to talk with Patrick Harker last year, and he hates crypto, like, everyone hates crypto and thinks it's terrible. At least that's what they
Keep
say.
it far away from our bank.
Which I understand, but I mean, I think more and more large institutions are starting to recognize the value with, you know, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Citadel. State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock, everyone getting into it now. So I mean, I think it was like standing strong in the face of all that adversity that allowed us to grow, because, you know, people are still seeing that there's opportunities there, and they're still seeing that there is something going on that is catching everyone's attention.
Yeah.
But being told you're stupid, like, time after time again, and kind of like Tom is saying, like, cold calling people and getting on the phone with them and having them ask you questions and you thinking you're answering their questions perfectly, and they're like, you know what, nah, it's a no for me. And just still not believing in you, it's really hard, because letting the thoughts and comments and perceptions of other people impact your life is really hard not to do as a human. But having that belief in yourself and staying resilient through it all is like what matters most, because only you have that feeling for yourself. And no matter how many times like people will bash you or you'll get knocked down, like getting back up is like the only way to win. Because, you know, you never know if you're on your 200th cold call, you never know if the 201st might be a yes. And that one yes could change your entire life.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely beautiful. And Ms. Mariani, I want to talk a little bit more about your experience, because I think that you have some of the most diverse experience on this entire panel, and I want to really talk a little bit more about that. So, I mean, you deal a lot with the cybersecurity, right? And within cybersecurity, there are always evolving threats. So how do you implement resilience with dealing with those evolving threats and really just the face of cybersecurity evolving with AI and things like that? I'm really interested in all that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the question. So, I mean, it's hard, right? There's every day a new threat and a new type of threat evolves, right? Like you said, I mean, we were just talking the other day about AI. You've all probably seen like deep fakes, right? The viral one with Taylor Swift, and then a few years ago or a year ago now, there was one with Tom Cruise. This is for us, right? The other aspect of my job being the privacy work is all about keeping all of your data safe, right? And one of the ways we all keep our data safe, if we have an iPhone, is right, like biometric identification, or authentication, I should say. And things like that, for example, can be tripped up with the deep fake. If it's so good that the deep fake looks like me, it can open my phone, it can open my computer and look at all my data. So, I mean, it's constantly evolving. And so from my aspect, what we do is, you know, we look at the law and what we need to do is at like the bare minimum to make sure we're in compliance with the law in terms of cybersecurity regulations and storage and things like that. And then we have a whole cybersecurity team dedicated to what is the best way to keep our data safe, you know, whether that's end-to-end encryption or some other type of way of doing things. And so, I mean, it really is talking about being resilient there. I mean, you think you have it figured out, like, oh, you know, we're constantly getting these malware attacks. This is how we, you know, respond to malware attacks. Now all of a sudden we're getting something completely different, right? And so now we need to figure out how to handle that. I mean, it's an ever evolving process. It's like pushing the rock up the hill and it keeps falling back on you, because you know, you imagine these people that hack all these systems, if they could just use that for good, they'd be the best humans in the world, but no. And then they take all your money and run or whatever, and they're very motivated, they're very resilient in themselves, and they'll do whatever they need to do to get what they want to get. I mean, it's funny, when I first started at GM, I didn't realize that we even had like ransom. We use a company to basically hold money like for ransom attacks, right? So it's like, yeah, you know, this is like the level where we'll give you the money. Like if it's here's $100,000 and they hold our money and they handle it. And they make that calculated risk of whether it makes sense to pay the ransom and get the data back, or if it doesn't make sense. And they do a whole analysis to be like, all right, this is real, this is not real, this is high risk, this is low risk. So, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's nuts. It's ever evolving. Yeah, and so, you know, like I said, from my perspective, I just more look at what we need to do from like a regulatory stance, and then it's up to our cyber team to make sure that that's ironclad. And so they have the hard work, honestly, from that aspect of it. But I could still get in trouble if it all goes wrong, so. You know, balances out.
Anya, I'm curious about like the security and confidentiality around your role as well and the steps that you guys take to protect.
So it's funny you ask because my role, even though I'm the head of strategy, I am in ERM. That is my home department. It doesn't make sense. I don't know why it's like that, but in my spare time, they have me work on some of the risk stuff. So I do a lot of the risk surveillance too. And from the board, we have what's called SORM, and they give us our risk watch list of the year. Every year it's changing. It's normally the same, but some come on, some come off. And cybersecurity this year, it shot its way up to the top because we have crypto, we have AI, and you know, we can do all the trainings for us as staff, but there's only so much we can do for devices. So my phone and my laptop can't leave the country. If I go on vacation, it stays in America. I have to do all these things to get in my phone every day. And I'm like, it's me, I promise. So, you know, passwords have to change every couple weeks. Drivers are reset every night when I shut down. So there's a lot. And, you know, the risk is there. People want the information. Unfortunately, they do whatever they have to do to get it. We have a whole floor dedicated to IT that's constantly monitoring everything. And we still had some close calls. Not while I've been there, but it's happened. And AI just made it that much more scary for us. Because it's data that it could change the financial state of the country, you know, so it's not just impacting us as staff, and yeah, our job, we'll still have our jobs, people could lose their money. So, or their assets or whatever it is, so it's again, ever evolving, and all you can really do is keep up with your surveillance, keep up with your training. But you know, they're always one step ahead, and they have a lot of plan Bs, so that's why I say have a lot of plan Bs, because they have to. But it's just something that you kind of have to stay on top of, and you know, you have to remember like who you work with. Not everybody understands the technology behind it. Not everybody wants to understand it because they might come from a generation where this was never a thought. And they're like, wait, why do I have to do all these things to get into my computer? So it's constantly just communicating, you know, this is for your benefit, or we have to protect the economic society. That's our job. So again, we do a lot of checks, a lot of different things to make sure our stuff stays safe, but it's hard.
Yeah.
They're very smart.
Oh, it's
So-
insane. It's like Michelle was saying that like AI has thrown the most insane curveball into data security
Yeah.
because like biometrics were considered the gold standard for data protection previously, but now AI has gotten so good that it can replicate that, and
Yeah.
now you're needing not 2-factor, but 3 or 4 or 5-factor authentication
Yeah.
to go into your own system. So
Yeah.
really curious to see how this is going to develop. And Todd, I'd be curious if you have any comments on this as well and protocols that you guys have in place.
Well, I think we have something like 40 people from the NSA or former NSA employees working at Morgan Stanley. So it's like one of our largest spends every year is on protection for clients' assets, for sure. So,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, so for everyone in the audience, that's a good thing to note about like potential careers is that like across all these 3 very diverse organizations, it's like a top priority and something that's extremely valuable. And is only going to become more and more valuable in the age of quantum computing too, which I think, you know, AI is going to make AI look like a flash in the pan, because quantum computing has said that it could hack like Bitcoin and any computer system in the world in a matter of seconds once it's unleashed. And so I think the next couple of years are going to be both exciting and nerve-wracking in terms of what's to come.
And I'll just add that, you know, it's interesting when you work at different companies, when you can compare across the board. I briefly worked at Grindr, the dating app, prior to coming in GM, and I look back and I'm like, oh boy. Why, like, I don't know. I mean, you know, If anyone's on it, that's cool, but, I don't know if I put too many like personal things on there, cause it was a little wonky in terms of what we were doing. I was just like, yikes, this is a real mess. Everything was in a Google Drive. I'm like, I don't know, this,
Whoa,
yeah.
what in the
Yeah, I
world?
was like, this doesn't seem right at all. And then this is all kind of off topic, but I mean, there's so many scams now with like data leaks and this is just really funny, but I don't know if anybody saw the movie Saltburn. Did anyone see Saltburn? It's pretty wild.
I heard it's weird as fuck.
I was told not to
It's
watch it.
actually pretty good. I liked it. It's weird, but it's good. But anyway, there's this very famous scene of a guy in a bathtub. That's all I'll say, but anyway, this is just such a funny story, but so my brother lives, I'm from Scranton, PA, so one day he texted me, he was like, I got this candle in the mail. And it said Jacob Elordi's bathwater on it, and I don't know who sent it to me, and I'm like, that is the weirdest joke, like, who would send that? And I was like, I gotta figure out who sent this candle, because it was so insane. And then I think the ultimate thing was that it was actually what they call a brushing scam, where maybe your data was hacked, like maybe your address was leaked or something off Amazon. You did like a third party. And then these companies that like mass produce these things, like a candle or like, you know, Temu has all these like crazy companies on it that mass produce shirts or whatever. They'll steal all these addresses and start sending you, a real customer, these gifts for free. And then they'll use your verified account to put like you being like, this was a great candle, it smelled great, so that other people be like, oh, this is a reputable like company and I can buy from them. So I think that's ultimately what it was. There was like no, you know, sender, there was no like information. He tried to call the company and they never got back to him. It was very odd.
Wow.
But anyway, this is everywhere. This is the point. Like your data is being probably hacked right now. It's crazy.
It's truly so crazy, like even us, we're a tiny company, like in the grand scheme, you know, like nowhere near even our competitors or where we want to be, and we're getting like dozens of spam emails every day, like phishing links, PDFs to download, payroll, HR, you name it, and it is like confusing because like our team is like, hey, like Eli, are you sending me this like about payroll or about HR or anything? I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, you know, you really have to be careful and check like the address it's coming from, call the number, call the company, like try to verify in some way. Because I've had friends, like their moms, you know, will get a phone call asking for their credit card information and they're fully under the belief that it's someone looking out for them, give them their credit card and lose $20,000 that day.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful for sure.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Kind of to that point, I literally got a text message from somebody saying that they were Elijah saying that they wanted me to send them a gift card of like $500. I'm like, no, this is not anything that he would ever ask me. But yeah, I mean, it is very crazy how all those different things happen. And so I guess what I want to talk about a little bit more now is, you know, in the face of being a student and the fact that we're, you know, talking to a bunch of students here and, you know, we are students. What actionable steps do you guys think that we should take and can take to be so proactive, sociable, and resilient so that we can create the success that we envision for ourselves?
Guess I'll start. I mean, really, I've already said this, but taking advantage, I mean, obviously all of you are motivated, you're in this group, you're here to talk to us, to make these connections, but being motivated to take advantage of all the resources that Penn has. There are so many. I mean, there are things I remember I interned in DC one year and I forget what it was through. One of the departments here, if you just asked them for money to live, they would give it to you, but you had to like figure that out, right? And so I did, and then I got, I don't know, it was like a ton of money, but it was like $5,000 or something to go towards housing that, you know, I was working for the government, so they didn't pay anything. So it's just like little things. I mean, constantly like being proactive here at Penn, like what are the departments here that are available to you? What professors do you think can help you? I mean, I had a professor who's now like strategic advisor for like the DoD. He's still he's still technically here, but on sabbatical. But you just never know where people are gonna go, right? So making those connections and making connections with your fellow students. Again, you know, all of you are really smart. You could end up at, you know, all these amazing companies, the Googles, the Amazons, the Metas of the world, if that's where you want to go, or, you know, and beyond. And if you can call up someone and say like, hey, Elijah, like, do you have any openings or whatever? I mean, that's going to go so much farther than, you know, just being this like super type A, like I'm really smart, I have perfect grades, but I've got nothing else to really show. And I went to Penn for 4 years and I didn't take advantage of everything. I mean, that's really the difference between being that person that gets here and the person that gets here. So that's what I would say.
Two things for me that stand out is don't be afraid to shift gears or kind of switch things up. I am a prime example for how you could get a degree in one thing and end up somewhere else. My undergrad was at Rutgers in psychology and I minored in sociology. And then I got my master's here in criminology, went pre-law, and now I'm at the Fed. So I don't know. And then my brother that went to LeBeau is in commercial real estate. So when I told him I was gonna work at the Fed, he was like, all right, well, you're not invited to Thanksgiving. Like, you're the reason this is hard for me right now. So whatever, but I never stepped foot in Wharton until today. I was always across on Locust, but it doesn't, I mean, your walks of life will get you to where you're supposed to be. Because people ask me all the time, well, what does what you did have to do with the Fed? Strategy is all psychology. My strategy won't work if the psychology behind it doesn't make sense. And the criminology was all, I mean, you guys go to Penn, you know, everything here is a little science-based. So, you know, I learned R while I was here. I learned data analytics while I was here. And while I don't look at crime data, I'm still looking at some form of data. I'm still performing analytics. And we have analysts that they don't use R, but you know, I went to Penn, so they made sure I did. And just having like a little bit of knowledge in every little thing plays a long way in the work field. So if you just know finance, they'll come to you when they need that, but they might not come to you for other softer skills or other things that you might have an interest in. And I think developing yourself as a person and your interests is the second most important thing, because you could have gone to Wharton and that's fine, but then a topic might come up about politics or psychology and they might point to you because you're the one person in the room that has some type of a background in that, or just knowing another language. So I understand, you know, getting the grades here is very important. It's all what you guys are spending all your time on, but don't forget to find out what you're interested in too along the way. And if that means joining clubs from other departments, go do that. Like I know, you know, criminology department, they're always having guest speakers, I think almost every week, and there's free food. So, you know, take advantage, like, because a lot of those people end up going to the law school here. They do a dual program, and who doesn't want a lawyer friend that went to Penn? So I think meshing your interests and not thinking, oh, I have to stay in finance, I have to stay in business. Like you're a human too at the end of the day, and your personality plays a big part. Because when you do enter the workforce, you're gonna be you don't wanna be another finance person. You want someone to know your name, oh, well, that person knows this, or they're well spoken, or they're well traveled, and they know a little bit about this, so I'm gonna invite them to my meeting. And you go into that meeting might change your whole role that day. You might meet the right person in the right room. So I think, you know, developing your personality while getting the grades is very important. I don't think the grades alone is what you should leave here with. But I think networking in other departments, other clubs, and just, you want to be a new face every now and again.
I think that's such a great point. I know this is just crazy, but like, honestly, I think the whole topic of the event is about proactivity, sociability, and resilience. But Anya, I think you've introduced another crucial aspect to creating success, which is adaptability, right? And I think, I mean, you've hit it all spot on, so I don't need to go through it, but like, the importance of adaptability is something that truly is underrated. And I think us being able to all be here in this room and talk about, you know, the importance of these 4 traits now and actually, you know, shine a light on them, a very, very bright light on them, is what is going to allow us to succeed in all of our endeavors, of course.
Well, resilience isn't all, because when I think, a lot of people, when they think resilience, it's like, okay, they fell, they failed, and they got back up, but sometimes it's just changing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily having to face failure, but knowing when to change before you get to the point of failure, or just being told that this is not what I wanted to see. So I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with those points. I think if I was you guys, I would look around the room and see, am I having lunch with the same people every week? Am I talking to the same people at dinner? Am I in class next to the same people I sit next to and I do the club with afterwards? And if you are, I feel like you're missing out on what school and Penn and life in general is going to be for you. if you're only with people that think the same way you are. So, go to a different faith-based group that you would never go to before, see what that's like. Yeah, leave your apartment and go left instead of right or whatever, sit down instead of going anywhere or something, you know, just think about what you're doing. Is it just a pattern, a habit that you've just gotten comfortable with, or is it, yeah, I'm out here trying to make myself better and trying to experience different things and figure out what I do like. I mean, like the things you like right now, but if you don't try other things, you're not gonna know, I might like this better, or this is better for me, or it reflects something about yourself that you didn't know.
So, yeah,
I think going off what you said is also like, this school's hard. We all know it's hard to get in here. It's hard to make the grades and it's hard. You have to, I think also having a creative outlet is very important for your mental health, for your physical health. And if that's something you want to do alone, do that. If you want to do it with a friend or a friend from another department, do that too. But I think having a creative outlet, you'll learn, like in the time, it's like, okay, this is a stress reliever, but you'll take that with you when you graduate, and then that will be a soft skill that you developed unknowingly. But I think it's very important too, to have creative outlets and hobbies outside of school. And they don't have to have anything to do with academics. It can be whatever you like, but I know there's a lot of things here at Penn that you could tap into. So I would definitely have an outlet because this work is very stressful.
that's a really good point. Just being well-rounded in general and being able to like connect with people on a human level is so
Yeah.
important. And I'd say like along those lines, proactivity is almost a precursor to both resilience and social ability, because if you're not putting yourself out there, taking that first step, getting in those uncomfortable situations, standing up, falling down, getting back up, then you're never gonna have those experiences. And I remember that based on this quote from earlier, it was basically that the stress you're feeling is in the work that you're avoiding. I think that's so true, because whether you're recruiting or have an exam or something is stressing you out, it's usually because you know deep down that you haven't done all the things that you need to do to prepare for that. And therefore, like when you actually take those steps and you be proactive and you start preparing, it feels good. You feel like you're doing what you should be doing and that there's no better use of your time. And whether that is studying for an exam, doing interview prep, or going and being part of a new group, or learning a new skill or a creative outlet, I think goes a really long way. And I wanted to ask you a question, Todd, based on your experience, not only in your career, but in life, and how a lot of your current role is building long-lasting relationships with people. How would you say that, you know, you earn their trust, earn their respect, and kind of look at it on what sort of time?
Yeah, sure. So that's the biggest thing, is earning that person's trust. And that's how you get them to trust you with their long-term plan for forever. And I've heard things from clients that they haven't told their spouses or their kids, or they run it by me first, and I'm a stranger they met on the phone, you know, so like I cold called them before cold calling was so much harder or whatever. But yeah, I think that building trust is huge, and part of that is really actually caring and getting to another person. So if you're gonna go to a new group, or you're gonna go to a new class, or try out a new sport or something, caring with people you're around is super important, not just like you're observing them like some kind of science experiment, but that you're genuinely caring about who they are and what they want, and you're listening to them, and you believe they can offer you something. And it's not just, I think it's very easy at a school like Penn, or just in life in general, to feel like you have the answers. And I have to remind myself constantly, I don't have all the answers, and I don't know what's next, and I don't know what's best for myself sometimes. I need to be open to the outside world and what people can speak into my life, and how that can change where my path is going and how it can change who I am. So
It makes sense for sure. How important would you say it is to meet people in person, like to grab lunch with them or visit them or have them visit you?
not that important.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have clients I've never met and been with me for 10 years, and I have all of their assets, and we get along great. And I think I would invite them to my wedding or something like that, they're that close. We just have never physically met person to person. So, I mean, I think long term, like, yeah, the idea is to meet them and do all that, but I don't think it's like it's not 100% necessary.
I would never expect that, even before COVID.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I met my clients in person now after COVID than I did before COVID. My clients all the like we get referrals or just cold calling people in weird places, and then just get them as clients, and you're just like never coming to that part of the country, but like I'm glad you trust me to manage your stuff. I'm always here when you call me, to text me anytime or whatever. But I think like since COVID, I feel like people have gotten very virtual and we're very used to like the online engagement. I think actually maybe the person now is probably like a bigger deal.
Absolutely. I think that goes to show like we are moving to this kind of like new world where you can really have great relationships over the internet and even on like an international basis, like people from other countries. And this is a great example of that where, you know, a lot of the people in our ecosystem we've never met in person, but they're making a huge impact for the company and for the entity, even from, you know, Zoom.
Right. And I think knowing yourself too, if you can be vulnerable virtually, or you can connect with someone virtually, then you should know that about yourself. And if you can't, and you have a hard time doing that or a hard time portraying that to someone else, if you do care about them, even though we're talking on the phone, every couple of weeks, every month, then you gotta know that about yourself. Or know that about the experience or relationship that you're building. Again, some clients want to see me all the time in person, some clients don't ever care to see me in person, just personal preference.
So interesting.
It is very, very interesting. And Todd, I have another question that you kind of just answered, but would love to dive deeper into. You talk a lot about, you know, I mean, obviously your job is a lot about developing relationships and things like that. And within our first event of the year at Business Brilliance, we talked about the importance of networking, and we had BlackRock's global head of tax on with that, sharing insights. And one of the things that we shared on that panel is that, you know, a lot of people always often say that it's about who you know in life, but I think most importantly, it's about who likes you. So with your strategies of getting people to like you, how do you truly establish that level of trust and that level of, you know, being able to be likable?
Yeah, sure. So I think, when I learned a big lesson when I graduated Penn, I called all my teammates, my 4 years, and asked them for their parents' phone numbers. I was like, I should open accounts for parents and family that I know, like we talked to them for the last 4 years, like we know each other. This is gonna go great. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna be so far ahead after the first year. I opened up 0 accounts that way. That was a terrible idea. Cause they're all like, who are you? You're 23, like I know who you are. You went to school with my son, like, you know, I'm not giving you all my money. So originally it was okay, cold calling, finding strangers. I could prove myself too, when it's like, I don't know the answer to the question they're asking, admitting that, and saying, I'll get back to you within this time frame of knowing, what the right answer is. And following up on that constantly and letting them know, okay, you can call me anytime, with any question you have. I want to replace all your 800 numbers, all the financial question people you ever, auto loans or whatever. You don't even do all that stuff, but call me with your question first. I'll find out an answer. I'll give you 2 or 3 things to educate you on what I think the best choices are. And then it's your choice in the end. So I think like building the trust that way of, okay, I said I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I follow up on it. I make sure that I stick to the timeline I have or get back to them sooner. One of my best clients now is I cold called him. He didn't answer. He called me back. He was like, is this Merrill Lynch? I'm like, yeah. He's like, great. Can you find me a tax form I need for tax day? I'm like, sure. What's like, give me, I don't even know if I can, but sure, I'll figure it out. I'll get back to you. Called back sooner than he expected. He's like, this was great. Like, thank you so much. I'm like, yeah, by the way, you open to having a talk with a financial advisor? He's like, actually, we are interviewing people right now. So I'm happy to have a conversation. My largest client to date, I'm like, random cold call me back. I was sitting there after 5 o'clock. He called me at 5:30, like just pick the phone up kind of thing. So, but we built trust over time of getting to know each other and again, stick to the timelines we have and just that level of, okay, I'm going to perform when I say I'm going to perform. And I'm also going to admit when I can't perform and knowing that, I don't always have to be right or always have the answer. They just want to know that I'm working on it. I care. I'm being truthful.
Yeah, I think that's great. And since we are coming to the end of the hour, I have one last hard hitting question for all of you guys that I think makes this a lot more personable and really just more influential on and inspiring for all of us here today. But I just want to go down the line and ask you guys, have you guys achieved the success that you envisioned for yourself? And if not, what are you striving for? Anybody can start.
Well, I think that depends on how you define success. I think at a young age, it's a dollar sign. But I think, as you graduate and you try to get jobs and then you get the job you think you like and you hate it, I think success is being happy with what you're doing and not dreading to go to work. So I love what I do and when I look back, I'm like, oh, undergrad me would have never thought. And even grad school me would have never thought, but I'm successful because I love my job. And I think it's important to not look at it as a dollar sign. Because with time, the money normally comes, you know, you get promoted or you apply for a vacancy in the department and wherever you work for a higher role, like that can come. But if people see, oh, well, that person, they kind of look miserable all the time, you're not gonna get that promotion. So in terms of just liking what you do and being content with where you are, I consider that successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess when I graduated Penn, I moved to New York City and I worked as a paralegal at a law firm. Probably such we all did. And I remember being at this law firm and thinking like, oh, this is terrible. I hate this, and I'm gonna sit at this desk all day and do this stupid job, and no one's even gonna know what I'm doing, and my whole life like doesn't matter. It's like
Jeez.
existential crisis about it. That's like, this can't be me. And then I mean, then I went to law school, which is a whole other thing, but because I didn't know what else to do. But I went to law school and then I got out of law school and I was clerking and that was good. And I'm like, okay, this is like the stepping stone to the next thing. And then I didn't really get the opportunities that I wanted. And I went to a law firm, like a larger law firm here in Philly. And I remember the pandemic hit and I was in my apartment and I was like, ugh, if this is like what retirement is like, and I'm just sitting in my apartment and this is what I've done my entire life is work at this firm, I'm gonna kill myself. I know that's so dramatic, but I was just like, I don't like this. This is so boring. And so I was just like, you know what, I gotta do something else, which wasn't a big revelation, because I knew I did, but I started applying for jobs and I started getting involved in, I was doing antitrust law, which maybe some people are interested in. I was not, I just had a litigation background, kind of flew into that, but I didn't like it. And I really wanted to do privacy because it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, and you really are making your mark on the world. Like this type of law is happening as we speak, right? So I wanted to do that. And I kind of talked about being adaptable. Like I tried to like, you know, kind of shove my resume that way and make it seem like I had more privacy experience, and I got the opportunity at Grindr. And then that led to my role at GM, and now I'm doing what I want to do. And so I think I'm definitely on my way to success. I think it 100% is, you know, are you happy with what you do? But I also think, you know, in 5 years, maybe I'll have the opportunity to go to another company and learn what they do or something, you know, another area that not, I mean, still doing privacy, but maybe like something completely different, like sports or whatever. And that to me is super exciting, this idea that I can constantly be changing and doing something else. And so for me, I definitely think I'm on the cusp of where I want to be. And I think it can only really get better from here. So definitely a journey, but getting there.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I'm there yet, or how you want to phrase that. I feel like there's more for me and my own potential and reaching my own potential in my job now. And part of that is going to be doing different experiences and challenging myself in ways I haven't yet. I built a successful business now, but what's it like in 10 years from now and how I can impact not only my clients' lives, but also the lives of the people around me and helping coach and bring up in the business. I love it. I think I'm, again, very fortunate that I found a career that I really like. And I feel challenged by it, and I feel like I'm connected with the families I'm with. I feel so lucky for all of that, but no, I'm not the full potential yet, and it's definitely a process. Look forward to it.
100%. I think everything you guys said really resonates with me, and being able to live your life in a way that you feel good about and you like waking up every day and are excited about the day ahead of you is really important. And I think that goes right along with freedom, like having the freedom to do what you want. And that's why like all of us work so hard in high school to get to Penn, is like to have as many choices as possible. And I think in your career too, like having the freedom to use your skill set to transition into different roles or different areas is really important. And also, like, I think so many people are caught up on like the dollar sign or the final destination, whereas it really is about like the journey and building something. And I think that gets lost a lot for young people, and in the sense that like, you know, I've talked to people that have all the money in the world, like yachts, private jets, and like it can be really miserable. And people in Guatemala or Nicaragua, you know, volunteering there and building churches and schools, and they're like the happiest, most grateful people in the world. And so I really think it does come down to like mindset, as well as like your idea of both freedom and connectivity with people, like relationships, I think really matter, and going through life with all the money in the world but no friends is not a good way to live life and not a good way to define success. So I think it's like really about being well-rounded, having the freedom to do what you want. And of course, I mean, money is like really important part of society. Like you need money to buy food and have a nice house and be able to do the things you want to do. But I think like there has to be like an even spread of all those things. It can't be disproportionate in one.
I think that's very, very inspiring from each and every one of you guys. And I think it's a testament to the fact that regardless of if you're still a student or if, you've been in the game for, over a decade, it is just a matter of, constantly evolving no matter what. I think that's something that none of us really have a choice over. The fact that time is going to continue to pass, but the fact that we're all always going to be in the present moment. And there are always going to be resources, especially since we're at Penn. It's just a matter of all of us being able to be resourceful and being able to use all of these things to, our benefit and to our advantage. So I think other than that, it is time for questions and a Q&A. So if you guys have questions for the panelists,
I have a question for Sarah. Oh, sorry. I was
I would say that's,
a big aspect that I took away from your presentation was talking about how much cold calling really like impacted you and like made you got you into that vulnerable state to make people feel people, I guess. I want to get into like sales too, and I don't like going into things without knowing anything because I don't want to look like an idiot. Would you have any like advice or tips that we could have so I could just build a foundation or at least like set the structure for my future?
yeah, absolutely. All right, so for me, my career as a financial advisor, trying to give advice on mortgages or life insurance or 401ks when I was 24, like I never even had a mortgage before. Like I never had a 401k. But when you pass the licensing exams, I was reminded constantly that once I pass those exams, I've gone through the required like training to get to day one. Okay, here's the phone and good luck. More than 95% of people out there. So if you take the time to study what you're trying to sell or whatever industry or field you're getting into, you study it for a little bit of time, you're going to know more than the average person. So taking that confidence into every phone call or into every connection you're going to make, but also being humble enough to say, I'm not sure about that answer, I will get back to you, is like a super valuable skill. So pushing yourself to just go ahead and do it and jump into it and say, I'm going to try this for a while. I'm going to really study it. I'm going to get home every night. I'm going to read a book about being a financial advisor. I'm going to read a book about the markets. I'm going to read CNBC's headlines every morning or subscribe to the Wall Street Journal or whatever. Like just dive into it. And if you do that, you're going to know more than I talked to like probably my entire career, a handful of people who knew more about the markets than I did. And I don't even follow the markets that closely. It's not really my job. So, yeah, so just like having that confidence and having someone next to you say, you can be confident in this because you've studied, you've gotten the exams done, you're on the right track, you've done training work, you've put all the work in before you start hitting the ground to know, okay, yeah, I think I know more than the average person and enough to get the job done.
I heard that there's a saying, say, if you do not know what you like to do, go to the consulting. Do you think this is a choose? Or do you have like other suggestion? But if I do not know what I love to do and what do I want to do?
I always wanted to work in consulting. I always wanted that job, actually. I don't know why.
It's a great question.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I always make fun of my friends. It's terrible. It's a good career, but I'm like, why? I had one friend, frankly, it's not smart. And we're really acquaintances, honestly, but she did consulting. And I'm like, who would ever hire you to tell them how to do your job? You're not even in this field. It doesn't make any sense to me. But there's a lot better consultants out there than she. But that's a really tough question. I mean, I was there too. It's kind of how I ended up in law school because I was like, actually a professor here at Penn said law school is was finishing school for the undecided, which is so true. But it's hard. I mean, you know, I think, I remember when I was at Penn, I think you kind of had to declare a major by like your first semester sophomore year in order to get the credits to finish, and it's not a ton of time. But I mean, I think one of the best things you can do really is if you have enough time in your schedule, you know, fill it with electives that you might be interested in, or that can be like fungible, right? So like, if you've never taken an econ class before, take an econ class, because that could work in a bunch of different areas. Like, you can pick up a minor and drop the minor if you don't like it. You know, I picked up marketing just to try it out, didn't like it, dropped it. You know, talk to your friends, talk to people who you admire their careers and see where they started. I think that's a great one. Look, I have a friend who went into like fashion design. I wish I'd talked to her earlier because I think that's so cool. And it was such like a weird path to get there, but she, you know, went to Wharton and did it. So it's talk to people who you kind of value what they do and see if you can kind of glean what their path was like. And then also try and make space in your schedule to try out different things, or at least find time to, if you don't have time for the classes, find a professor that teaches that class and maybe like go talk to them in office hours or something like that. And maybe like get in touch with things that you like to do, you know, maybe you like writing, but like, I have no idea how to make this into a career. Well, maybe talk to someone in the English department, be like, have you ever considered publishing? Have you ever considered, you know, working for like a, you know, you can go into like screenwriting by doing that. There's so many different things you can do with just like one skill or one, you know, like, so.
Yeah, just to build up, I have a lot to say on this, but I'll keep it brief. I actually, like, when I was a freshman, I went to a Bain consulting session and there was like 300 undergrads all fighting to talk to one analyst, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the last thing I want to do. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start my own consulting company and compete with Bain and McKinsey. And you know, it actually is going pretty well. It's one of our portfolio companies now. But
There's nothing wrong with consulting.
To Jean Michelle's point, but it's like, it's actually a really good point what you ended with is that like, instead of like going into like a generic like consulting role, you should look deeply into the things you care about and the things that excite you and try to build a career around that. Because chances are, to Todd's point, if you study that and you learn about it, then you'll know more about that than most people. And therefore you could even become a consultant for that sub-industry that you actually are passionate and interested about, which will differentiate you for years and years and probably result in a lot more success.
Yeah.
Another thing really quick on that is there's this book called When Mackenzie Comes to Town. Has anyone read that book in here? Oh my gosh, I cannot recommend it enough. It will change your entire opinion on the big consulting firms and the work that they do. It's basically a hit piece, which I didn't know when I got the book. I thought it was like, you know, going to be all this insightful diligence and great work that they do. But it's these two New York Times authors and investigative journalists that expose all the corruption that McKinsey brings into these institutions, where essentially like they claim that all they do is, you know, protect special interests of big government PACs and basically fire all the American employees and then offshore for like a tenth of the cost, and it reduces quality. And, you know, kind of like Jean Michelle was saying, that you just like really do slide decks and edit slide decks, you know, your first couple of years there. And so I think looking into your passion and trying to like, you know, find some sort of niche will really differentiate yourself. Even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, it's better to find some sort of niche that you can be really good at and become an expert in than to just be like a generalist and kind of like be a drop in the ocean at one of these big firms.
Yeah, I think too, like if I heard someone recently, like your 20s are for trying things and failing at them. Your 30s are for like narrowing down what you really want to do, and your 40s are for like becoming an expert in those fields. And so I feel like they take that pressure off of like, oh, when I graduate, I better know what I want to do and who I want to work for. And or I'll be in 30 years from now, like you're not gonna know. And it's, I think, a waste of time to try and figure that out. Or like you need to make sure you get a job and like, don't live in your parents' basement. But other than that, like just go try different stuff and try to be an expert in all different things to find out what expertise you really enjoy.
Hi, my name's Edward. I'm really curious. What are your recommendations for like keeping up with the connections? Like people that you do meet, like let's say I sit down with someone, I have lunch with them. What is your recommendations for like keeping in touch with them, understanding how to like bring them into your life? not network, but like into like your friendship circles and really allow your branches to expand?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I like this question because, so when I don't know if all the departments here do the same, but for criminology, I had to interview with the dean of the department, it's Professor Ridgway. I don't know if you guys have ever had a class with him or anything. But I interviewed with him to get into the program, and then he was my professor for for CrimStat and and for our thesis. He basically said, okay, your thesis is crap by the end of the year, you don't get a degree, or you do. So kind of like important whether or not I get a degree. I think I've had him be a reference for me from when I graduated in 2020 until now, almost like half a dozen times. And every time like, oh, this guy's gonna block me on LinkedIn, like this is it. He's he's probably wondering like why to keep like needing a reference, like are you getting fired? And you know, every time I come to him, I'm like, okay, this is what it is now. This is the job. And at one point, it was a federal agency. I'm like, this is it. Like, they're gonna call you. Don't be like weird. Answer the phone. Cause they call from like weird area codes. And every time he's not mean about it. And I'm like, all right, if this was me, I don't know if I keep being this girl's reference. Like, so I'm thinking to myself, why are you still keeping in touch with me? Like, you're a professor at Penn, you have a busy life. But every now and then I just shoot him a message on LinkedIn. Hey, like, how are your kids? What's going on? I come and talk to his class every fall about what to expect. So just keeping in touch with people that you think, I don't want to say a human should ever be a resource, but a person that you think will help leverage you in your career at some point down the line. And you know, this is a UPenn dean, like he holds weight, his title holds weight. So when he asks me every now and then, can you come talk to my current class? Okay, sure. You know, why not? Or can you come talk to them about the thesis statement that they have to do? Sure. So not just asking, but kind of reciprocating also will keep those ties. And I did a lot of things while I was here too, like I TA'd for him, I held office hours for him. So sometimes you might have to sacrifice some time while your friends are out doing whatever, you want to hang out with them, but it'll help you in the long run. So just, you know, be polite and be personable. Like they could see right through, oh, this guy is just shooting me a message. He doesn't care. He just wants me as a connect, but like genuinely show interest and keep up. Like, don't just forget. And then, oh, it's been 2 years. I need to reach out. You know, that they see right through that. So just keep up with the interests that are the people that you think you would want to have that communication with.
Yeah, I'll let Todd go deep on this, but just a fun little Easter egg on this. I mean, like CRMs are $1 trillion industry, contact or customer relationship management, and there's lots of great systems out there that you can use for this. It all started with John D. Rockefeller keeping like a literal physical book of everyone he met. Not only would he like write down their name, their address, but any information about them, like their kids' names, their kids' birthdays, all this stuff, and like sending them a card when their kids have a birthday, or the first thing he asks them when he sees them is like all the stuff he wrote down, and then he gets back and fills out all that information. And in the world of technology today, it's easier to do that than ever before. And the Easter egg I brought up is one of my friends who they're starting a new country. His company is called Praxis. It's really interesting in there. It's actually insane. They have like huge like Saudi wealth money behind them, like hundreds of millions of dollars. It's really incredible. I'd encourage everyone to look into it. They also have a lot of job openings right now, with some insane titles that I've never seen before. But he got the Apple Vision Pro and was showing us a demo of his CRM system that patches like all sorts of different softwares together and allows him to visualize all of his network as bubbles. And you click on them and it shows up notes about like every conversation they've had, all that person's information. And so moving into this world of like spatial and AR, VR, I think is going to transform even like the book to computer CRM that transform everything. And that's going to happen again, probably at an exponential clip with this move into spatial. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of deep insight into this, but like the phone in your pocket can make phone calls, like I would use it for that occasionally. We get so used to like email and text and like it's easier, right? It is easier, but it also makes phone calls. So like call and just talk. I don't know. It's not.
No, a phone call goes a lot further than text, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it's my goal. My business is like, okay, I want to make all these contacts and the clients turn them into friends, right? So how do you make friends? You get to know about them, join some more interests, ask them questions about what's going on in their life, talk to them on the phone. It's not, you know,
Oh, rocket science.
yeah, don't treat them like they're in your CRM when they're like
Yeah.
your friend down the street, like that's weird. Your kid's birthday's on Tuesdays from now, right? And you're like.
Why do you know that?
So true. It's a fine line. for
Right,
sure.
yeah.
And Joey, I know you had a question too.
Yeah, first off, thank you guys for coming. I enjoyed the talk. Hearing you guys talk about, jumping different jobs, it kind of reminds me of one of my biggest complaints about school is that I think it really orients kids towards the future, which is great for thinking about your success, but along the way, you kind of lose touch with having a love for what you're doing now. And so my question is, basically, is there anything you guys do or any practical steps you take to appreciate the present moment while also trying to figure out, what I'm gonna do next? Like, I'm a sophomore recruiting for junior internships right now, which to me is so crazy that I'm thinking about a job that oftentimes I find myself spending time on things that don't have substance. It's just, let me do this to put on my resume so I can get hired, but like, it has no meaning to me or I'm not gaining anything from it. So how do you guys like stay in the present while also trying to figure out your next step?
Excellent question.
Yeah,
Good question.
that's a good question. Well, I guess I would say if you have an idea of what you want to do in the future, and it's, well, I'll be very specific and say, if anyone here wants to go to law school, do whatever you want in college, it doesn't matter. I wish I had majored in Italian. Poli-sci feels, oh, it's really blah, 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 like, I'm gonna be great. Nobody gives a crap. So do whatever you want, seriously. So if you want to go to PhD, anything, it doesn't matter. They will take you, sorry, not anyone's gonna take you. It'll depend on your application, but if you have good grades, what your undergrad was won't necessarily matter. Now, of course, if you're going into something more structured, like you want to do be a financial analyst or something like that, they want to see that you did stat and econ and all those things. But I think that we get really stuck. I remember being at Penn and like being on this path, like I have to do A, B, C, D, E, and then I'm gonna get a job, and then I'm gonna do this, and you're so rigid about that path. And if you just take a step back, there really is a lot of freedom, right? Like, let's say you want to go to med school, you want to take your biology, your anatomy and all that stuff, but like, you don't need to do, these extra science courses. You don't need to take calc because you think, oh, this is going to make me look better. You could take that time and do something else that you think you might like, because really what those schools are looking for is like, and not everyone's going to go on higher education, but like, if that was your goal, they're looking for like a high G, if it was, med school, they're looking for high GPA, good MCAT, and like the rest kind of falls into place, right? So don't think like I have to do every single thing that like a good financial analyst, a good doctor, a good lawyer would do to get that job. You really don't need to. Like even when I was coming to Penn, I remember someone was like, oh, they'll love that you took Latin. I was like, okay, so I took 4 years of Latin, like the craziest woman I've ever met in my life. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. Excuse me, nobody cared. Like no one, in fact, I was behind everybody because then I couldn't test on the language. Nobody speaks Latin. It's a complete waste of time. So it's like, don't get caught up. I think it's so easy to get so caught up. You hear somebody or like you see that like overachiever in your class, like, well, I'm taking, 5 maths this semester because I think this is really gonna look good to like so-and-so. And you're like, dude, chill. You know what I mean? Seriously, I even like, I was so intense about getting like my paralegal job. Like being a paralegal was terrible. As I already said, but like I was so intense about it because that's what everybody else was doing. I kind of wish I had taken like a step back and been like, well, maybe I should just like, it's okay if my job doesn't start on June 1 and it doesn't start till September 1. Like if that extra couple months gets me somewhere else that I'm gonna like better, that's okay. I think it's really easy to get so caught up in the mindset here. And it's super important to like take a step back. So that would be my insight.
I was gonna say also, I think and this isn't always, but when you get a job, you're replacing somebody, right? Like most of the time, like I replaced somebody. So you don't have this luxury everywhere, but at the Fed, you can go and talk, you could go find the email of anybody in the system in any bank. So first thing I did, like, after a week, because you don't want to see meager, I asked my boss, I was like, who did I replace? Like, what happened? Did she get fired? What did she do wrong? He's like, oh no, she went to Fed Atlanta. I said, okay, bet. So I went in, I found her contact information, and I emailed her. And I said, well, I looked at your org chart, it says you were an analyst and then you got the office down there, you got your own office, how'd you do that? And she was like, okay, whoa, like, this is weird. But then I told her, like, I'm taking your desk. She explained it to me. She's like, oh, I got my PNP certification. All right, cool. I'm getting my PNP now in May. So it's like, try to figure out who was there before you. And how did they succeed? Did they leave the company because they got a VP role somewhere else? Touch base with them or add them on LinkedIn. Like, what are they gonna do? Tell you to like F off? All right, you tried. But for me, it worked. She's like, oh, okay, welcome. And then once I started talking, she's like, oh, if you have any questions about like this document that you're gonna have to produce, let me know. And I still keep in touch with her every now and then, but it's just kind of figuring out like what role did you just step into? And how do people, I don't want to say leave, but how do they get out of it to get to something better and kind of track back their steps and see, don't obviously like mold it to yourself, but see how you could benefit from those steps they took.
But that's some amazing advice, and I'd say too, like, even though it is easy to follow that trap at Penn where everyone's doing so much and you are competing with the most insane resumes imaginable, it's like even better to like chart your own path and follow like your own intuition and like what your intuition is telling you to do, like not just doing something that doesn't mean anything to you, because even if it looks good on your resume, it's not gonna, or it will come out like during your next interview that you weren't passionate about it and that you didn't care, and therefore like it's not gonna look as good, because even if it's on paper, like the equivalent interview lack of passion is gonna like not check out and look at you.
And I would just add to, I was thinking that, we're in Philly. Philly is such a cool city and there's so many opportunities. So I know especially with like on-campus recruiting and stuff, like your summers are immediately taken up by, working for Morgan Stanley or wherever it may be. But we have so many opportunities during this year, right? Where if you're like, I kind of have this like weird interest in like theater, I have this weird interest in art or like journalism, whatever. Take those like off, I call them like off-season times, and like maybe go get an internship if you have the time, obviously in your schedule, but like get an internship with ICA or like the Philly Inquirer or like NBC 10, One, the competition is much lower, so you're not competing with like other journalism students or things like that. But if you have this interest that you kind of just want to, explore, it's a great opportunity to do it.
Yeah, probably like controversially, I never had an internship. I mean, I've been trying to get into investment banking. I don't know what I was gonna do when I graduated from school, but I'm still not sure I'll be a girl, like, I'm not really sure what that looks like exactly. So like, I don't know, I think there's a balance of, yeah, you gotta prepare yourself for what's next, and like, if you wanna be in good shape, you gotta work out every day. Or every couple days or whatever, how it works. I honestly don't know that well, but yeah, still just like, being open to like, okay, I'm putting myself on the right enough path, like I'm not so far off from what I wanna do. I'm like on the right enough path that I can like give myself the freedom to say, okay, I mostly know where I'm going and what I wanna do, like ballpark general figure. I don't have to have every single minute planned out and, every day figured out ahead of time, because next thing came up for me was like, okay, I was gonna play professional baseball and that didn't work out. I'm like, okay, and I was like, I'm gonna go to law school, that didn't work out, okay. Then I worked a job in New York City and I was like, okay, this is cool, but I don't really like this job that much. And if I found my thing, like it was just what came next and what was available to me, and just keeping an open mind, open eye to what opportunities there are, even like outside of what the traditional realm of like what my friends were doing or what I thought I should be doing based on going to Penn.
That's very cool. And I think we need to wrap it up soon. So we'll do 2 more questions. And then we'll go with Audrey and Alex.
Hi, my name is Audrey. I just want to thank you all for coming back to Penn and giving us such like insightful, wise advice on, the kind of culture at Penn and what the heck is going on with our lives. And we just really appreciate it. My question is for Ani. I was really interested hearing about how you started in your undergrad with like psychology, and then you got your master's in criminology, and then you ended up working for the Fed. I'm first year at Wharton right now. I'm studying economic public policy. And I've always been really interested in like the intersection between the government, business, and economics. And so I wanted to hear more about kind of why you wanted to go into the Fed and how you got there, because everyone around me is kind of gunning for, you know, investment banking or consulting. And I was just wondering what the path to the Fed.
Well, that's a great question. It's gonna sound crazy, just roll with me for a second. So after I got my master's here, so you know, and every program here has their dream job. I feel like criminology, every single kid in that program, I promise you, wants to be a criminal analyst for the FBI. I'm telling you, that's what, because I wanted to do that, and my friend, and we all try, you know, and then you start the process. Well, if they take you, you start the process, and next thing you know, they're polygraphing you, and you're like, oh my God, I don't have an ounce of privacy for the rest of my life. So we change paths really quickly. But so that's what I was doing. We were all doing that. And take into consideration, I graduated in 2020, which means I graduated in person here in 2021, had to come back. So, you know, it's the pandemic, and you realize it doesn't matter if you went to Penn, if you went to Harvard, if you went to Yale, no one was getting a job. Like, it didn't matter. And it was very eye-opening, like, damn, like this piece of paper, no matter what's on it right now, the world is literally falling and burning. So that's how they made it seem. So it's really, from then into now, I was an analyst for the CDC, for their overdose data to action initiative, which, if you're thinking why that, well, that was getting me a job at the DEA, which hinged back to here, the degree I got here. And then you realize, like, data analysis, it's the same. Everywhere you go, it's the same, just that the data is changing. So if you're looking at what I was looking at, it was like DEA overdose data at the time. And when I was doing art here, we were using old criminal data that the FBI, you know, they let us use, but it's still data. You're still analyzing, or you're coding, or you're drawing analysis. Like, the process is the same. It's just a matter of what are you looking at. And I realized, I'm like, well, I could do this for this. I could do this for whatever I want. Like, but it's that skill. And that's why I was saying earlier, like, learn and develop your skills that could be used wherever you go. Because you could go look at medical data, you could go look at whatever you want. But as I was looking into the role and I was applying for the role, I'm like, I like the idea of strategy, because you could take all your skills, all your experience, and you shape a strategy that you think works best. And then your hardest task is getting every VP at the Federal Reserve to say, okay, sounds good. What do I get out of this? How much funding do I get? You know, that's the big question. But you could do whatever you want with strategy, and you could put your own twist on it. And it's like little improvements that gets your name in people's mouths. And that's how, you know, you move up, especially at a place like the Fed where it's so big. You have a lot of analysts that, you know, they're doing budget all day, or they're in accounting and they're crunching the numbers all day. They don't get to leave their desks. I can't work a job like that. I'll go nuts. So, and it's funny what you were saying about your meetings. I schedule all my meetings in person. I know, like, you would never, but it depends on the environment where you work. But I like being able to take analytics, strategy, and kind of go out and do my own thing with different departments in the bank. And we don't have to do it the way Richmond is doing it. We don't have to do it the way the Fed in Atlanta is doing it. We can kind of, because, you know, we have our own economic policy, like whatever works here for our society. So it's kind of just using your skills that you develop and seeing where you end up. Because if you told me when I was here that I was gonna end up at the Fed, we thought you lost your mind. I'm like, no, I'm gonna go work for the CIA and like go look at bad guy data. Like, that's what we all want to do, you know? And then or a lot of people go to law school. So it's like not honing down while you're here. This is what I have to do because this is what my degree will get me. Your degree will get you wherever you want to get you if you develop the skills.
Thank you.
Sure. So my name is Alex. First of all, thank you to everyone for speaking here today and for all of your fantastic insights. And I know you already answered a question about keeping connections, about maintaining connections a bit. but I have a little bit more of a specific one. Like, Annie, you had talked about connecting people to people who you hadn't had that much link to before. I think it's a little bit easier to follow up with, say, a professor you really like, or someone you already had genuine experience with. But if you're trying to connect to someone basically the LinkedIn route, like your predecessor or someone you want to have a coffee chat with in your industry, how do you keep that relationship alive while making it seem natural? Say I had a coffee chat with someone once, and now I want to sort of keep them as a reference, maybe as a recommendation one day, but I want to make it seem natural. Should I just like reach out to them, see how are you doing? How'd that project go every so often? Or should I like try talking again with them? Or how would you go about that?
I would be very honest and upfront about it, because chances are they know, like at this age, you know. Or when you enter the workforce, yeah, you're making friends. I hope you still make friends and have friends, but you know, if you're approaching somebody on LinkedIn or via email, you're on LinkedIn for networking. You know, it's not Facebook, it's not Instagram, like you're there for networking. So if you're approaching somebody, they kind of already have an idea that, hey, I'm trying to make a professional relationship here. But I think taking out the sugarcoating, like don't ask a question you don't care about the answer. Don't ask about their dog if you don't care about their dog. Just be genuine about it and say, oh, you know, I really would like to keep up this relationship, and keep them on their toes in the sense where it's not just benefiting you, make them feel like it's benefiting them too. And I think I was touching on this with you earlier, like you have to also give. You can't just keep expecting to take someone's time if you're not going to add value to theirs. So try to think of ways you could help them. And, you know, even if it's not with work, like outside of work, like if you guys are having these conversations over coffee and they're talking about something that they're doing in their personal life, like, oh, guess what I saw that might help you, I'll send it your way or something like that. But just to show that you have a genuine desire to have that connection with them.
Thank you.
I think most people are eager to help. I think people are occasionally people are eager to help. And I think if you give them opportunity to do that or talk about themselves or give the opportunity for them to give advice, like the reason we all replied to the random, like.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like Alex is a weird email from him, like, is this a scam or what?
Not say I.
Yeah. Like, why? Because like giving advice, that's part in our personality traits. So if you find that kind of person who's willing to go to coffee with you one time, getting coffee with them again, and then saying to them, hey, look, I'm trying to build a professional network. How would you do it? If you were me, what's some advice you would have for me to further our relationship or other relationships like this, or to get the job I want, or whatever the thing is that you want? So just being open about that is.
And I would just add that you know, I've had people reach out to me in the past saying like, hey, you know, I'm applying for this job and I'm wondering if you'd be like a reference or something like that. And, you know, he had some sort of connection, either went to Penn together or, you know, not that I knew them in school, but like, hey, I'm a Penn grad, you're a Penn grad, I saw you work here, I'm interested, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. I'm happy to help out people that want to, you know, receive help. But what I will say is, let's say you reached out to me and I said, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'll see if I can check on that for you. And I do. And I say, oh, you know what? Like the job closed. I'm really sorry. Be very gracious and be like, that's, you know, no problem. Thank you so much. It was nice of you to check anyway. Hopefully we can talk more in the future. I remember specifically when I was clerking, a guy I knew reached out to me. And when I told him like the job had been filled, he never even responded to me. I'm like, what? But so I'd never help him again. So I'd be like, well, you're so transparent. So, you know, just keeping that like nicety, say, even if it didn't work out for you this time, you know, be gracious about it. I think that they'll take you a long way, especially with these like LinkedIn connections.
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so everything is said is spot on.
Well, I want to just thank everybody for coming, of course, and I want to thank the panelists once again for providing such excellent advice to all of us as students. I think we have all taken away a thing or two away from you guys' insights, and just can't thank you guys enough, honestly. And I'm glad to, you know, have you within the Business Brilliance ecosystem, and I'm sure that if any one of these people or any one of the Business Brilliance members has any additional advice, they can always ask you guys questions. So.
Yeah, let's give a round of applause.
Yeah, so now that the panel is over, we'll take a group picture and then we'll just have networking and Q and A. I know people have to go. But yeah, people have crazy midterms and yeah, I think it's, let's get this picture going.
Such a pleasure. As well. That was awesome. You guys are very wise.
It was awesome. Very, very good.
I want to ask you on the. See you. Yeah.
That's that.
I mean. I mean, I wouldn't know. I have to bring my own face.
Thousand Goldman, like. Oh, yeah, let me go droopy.
It's for everybody.
I like on a date.
I feel like it's like last week.
Alright, can everyone get George in the back of the room, picture up against the background?
Yeah, I like it. I've not seen this.
Against that brown wall.
Next week.
I know you have to get out of here.
I saw.
Not.
God, I